Hey everybody, it's Snoo, and today I want to bring you an update video for my Explosive Concoction League Starter as it has progressed from League Start all the way to the end of Day 7. So you could think of this as a little bit of a Day 7 update, although I'm not going to really talk about farming and everything. I'm just going to be talking about the character and how it went. We're going to, of course, discuss the usual things. You know the drill. I'm going to do a map, a very quick map, because it's a quick character now. And then we're going to get into the gear, the gems, the passives, and the PoE, and anything that really stands out outside of stuff I already talked about in the League Start guide. I will spend a little bit of extra time on that, but otherwise it's going to be much faster than normal, I think. And, I don't need to tell you about the genesis of the build because I already did that in the League Start guide. But I will say, up front, it's been really nice. It was a bit of a struggle. It was quite squishy build there for a while, getting into red maps and gearing things up. Honestly, it's still kind of a squishy build, but just like any nice blasting build, it kind of reaches a point where the damage starts to outperform the necessity of defense, if you will, a little bit like that. And it's given me great pleasure to be able to just walk up to a wandering path, massive pack size expedition, blow a single bomb on the thing, and just absolutely blitz it down, no questions asked. Hopefully we get to see that in the map showcase. It has like a 90% chance to spawn. With the strategies I've been doing, I've been coming out with a couple recent videos, farming videos. So I'm just going to be doing a sort of, very, very low investment example farm. And we'll take it from there. So here it is. The character is ripping fast. I got a nice, easy map, a little bit easier than normal. And this is a Growing Hordes, Searing Exarch, very low investment farming strategy, just like the last 100 maps video I came out with. So you can go there if you really want to see what the strategy is. But we just want you to kind of pay attention to how exactly I run the map. I will kind of talk through it a little bit here, and we'll kind of, so when I discuss things later, it'll kind of make sense to how it went there. So I got a weapon swap with Invictus thanks to the delayed projectile. That's very easy. That's not even a good altar. Gonna rush the boss. Val Smite for a whole bunch of extra damage. We'll talk about that one. I'm definitely gonna give a little bit of extra time to Val Smite. That turned out being pretty awesome. You can see that essence monsters go down pretty easy. Movement speed through the map, rather impressive. And this is a city square, so it's of course very, very quick. Another Val Smite to reset the ores. Oh, look, we did get an expedition. Oh, that's nice. And even a Tujin one. So here, we'll try to be a little bit smart. I have a nice rampage buff running, so I don't really want to throw that away. That's actually rather impressive. So let's see what happens when we go in here. And I kind of almost died there because I was a bit out of position. I'll see how hard the expedition was afterward, but this is definitely a little harder than normal. It might be immune to one of the damage mods or just have a whole bunch of block or something. So sometimes, if it's an easy expedition, it's just everything just blows up. Oh, it looks like they have like the block stuff going on. Yeah, we'll look at that at the end of the map here. Let me go through and clear. I have 1,000 rampage stacks. I don't just want to throw that away. Okay, Val Smite again. I will loot things on the second round because it's shield charge build, so it's super zippy across the map. Don't really need to kill every single little thing, especially on a map where I didn't really spawn any good altars, as a matter of fact. But here was the adjacent duplicated map, so that's nice. And here, we're back here. Let's see. Immune to lightning damage. Okay, so yeah. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Immune to lightning damage means Val Smite didn't do anything, and about half of my damage was gone on top of that. But that's okay, because this character was extraordinarily well built for Expedition. It was able to handle it even with some really bad, nasty downsides, like lightning damage, which ended up basically being my primary source of damage at the end of the day, even though it's Explosive Concoction, primarily fire. But anyway, there is a map. It's very fast, very easy going. Aside from the little bit of a slip engaging with the expedition, didn't even come close to dying at any point. So let's go over some of the gear we got here. It's going to look quite familiar to the League Star. There was no major evolution to the gear. I think it's far more interesting the things that happened with the gem links as I evolved. But we'll start from the top. Let's go with the rare items. Now, I happened to get 3 rare items into this build. It was for belt, boots, and helmet. And of course, the League Start variations were quite cheap. And the ones I have are much better than that. And I discovered after the fact that I could get the June Benchcraft increased damage with non-Val skills during soul gain prevention. That was a really exciting moment when I realized I could put that on, because I knew that amount of flat damage would be huge. And even though my primary skill is in a Val skill, I'm still using Val Haste and Val Smite. So I have soul gain prevention, like, if I'm playing well, like 90% of the time. So that was pretty huge. Of course, it meant that I had to have really well-rolled gear to not have to put, attributes or resistances in this slot anyway. I think for the League Start variation, I had cooldown reduction for the prefix, but I never did end up getting my hands on a fractured elemental damage attacks prefix bow, or belt, I mean, and then, further craft it. I just got this one straight off. Maybe somebody got this from ROG, I don't know. It was like 1 divine. It was incredibly good value and exactly the kind of stats I was looking for. I settled on this one and never ended up replacing it, because it's just so good, aside from the fact that, it is a benchcraft elemental damage with attacks missing, like maybe up to 18% damage. That's okay. The last rare is, if I'm not mistaken, the very last piece of gear that I replaced. I went ahead and put the greater implicit on there for a little bit more impact. Gave myself like 11 more mana, I think. So instead of 40, or about 8 more mana, I guess. And here was the last minute change to accuracy. So I started to engage with the tattoo system, and it created a major problem because I'm running precise technique. And the problem with precise technique is I need to have more accuracy than life. As I was starting to improve my gear, I started getting more life than accuracy, or it was pushing that envelope. And then came the tattoo system, and I started losing all my dexterity if I wanted to use tattoos. And that just completely bricked the build. So the only way around that was to squeeze accuracy in, which made it even harder on the resistances and attributes. So that's okay, because that's what the tattoo system was for, mainly for helping that. And basically I used the tattoo system. We'll get into that a little bit, but long story short, mostly for tattoos, I fixed any attribute issues I had, and then I got to cram in a bunch of chaos res, which was a major weakness of this build. At the League start, it had like 0, and now it has 49, so that's way more than 0. And if I'm farming Exarch altars, that's a pretty big deal, being able to get some chaos res. The double taming is still there. It's perfect. They're perfect tamings now with the catalyst. And the Yoke of Suffering now actually has resistance catalysts on there, which are very expensive. But I ended up finding the perfect Yoke of Suffering and resistance combo with Mute Wind. I was able to kind of flex slot my resistances with Yoke of Suffering and Mute Wind. And you'll notice I have fire res on here instead of lightning res. And I got, all the basically got my gear all perfect, ready to go, all the way to the point where I managed to line up all my uncapped res so that the Wise Oak got maximum efficiency in the end. I've had it set up this way for about 3 or 4 days. I was really happy I was able to do that. I knew at the end of the day I was going to figure out some way to do that. And it was kind of expensive. I had to work on the yoke a lot, to get that. I was running a corrupted Mute Wind with Grace implicit, but I actually got annoyed by that because every time I swapped, I had to put Grace back on. So the weapons Invictus swap with Grace, and that didn't work very well. I mentioned I had this Invictus swap on here, so I've been able to get Rampage in the build because of the delayed projectile like this. Okay. And before it lands, I can swap, so that's pretty cool. As far as the other remaining gear, I guess Mute Wind ended up being a real awesome shield. I discovered it was really good in the process of making and creating the build, but as far as playability, I really loved it. I definitely liked it a lot. Enduring Cry with the reduction of cooldown recovery, I absolutely liked that quite a bit. Getting the Onslaught. Speaking of Onslaught, I also getting a Tanu Ahi. I was a little let down with the lack of uptime on Tanu Ahi, but it's okay. It's still a very good, sensible addition to the build, because you would have noticed in the map showcase my health was constantly like releaching to the top very quickly, and it pairs up extremely well with the Vessel Vinctor. 20% of lightning damage leeches life, and then 10% of leech is instant, and basically just getting massive amounts of leech, constantly tapping myself off. Really great. And then it's pretty easy to get this corruption on here. I think this is the only sort of specialized corruption on the gear I got around to getting, and that is increasing Val Smite and Innervate by 2. That's kind of a big deal. Talk about the gems in a second, but the remaining pieces of gear are the flasks. So, you know, perfect Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of the order here. Bismuth still here. Some people who are trying to follow my build will notice that I have the a different Vessel Vinctor. This is one that is extremely rare. I didn't realize that. I think this is the type that is in the build guide is Proliferation Vessel Vinctor. And at first, it didn't exist, so I was just using the one with the flat lightning damage to attacks, which is still fine. I mean, it's still pretty good because even though it didn't proliferate, it did make it so that when I shield charged over packs of monsters, they all became shocked anyway, because, you know, it still has, like, the nearby shocked. But, you know, another really valuable mod on here is the increased effect of shocks. It's actually pretty huge getting that, and then with increased flask effect, that number is over 60% increased effect of shock. Is really impactful. But the proliferation does help, of course, you know, especially with something like Expedition. You like shock a single monster and the entire expedition is shocked, basically at that point. So it is certainly better. I think it's like maybe 20% better than the other variant with the attacks. So either way, I mean, I would be using one or the other. I did have a rare flask with because I needed the suffix on the sapphire flasks to have a chance to freeze, shock, and ignite. I went ahead and settled for not having a quite 100% chance to shock or chill or ignite, obviously, because I was getting kind of tired of just getting ripped apart in some of these T16 wandering path maps, and I wanted to get whatever defenses I could. I don't take any advantage of the upside for damage, physical damage as extra, but I do get to take full benefit of phys damage taken as, and I would like to have, I think in the end I would like to have one of those mods on my shield as well, but I couldn't find one with the exact resist I needed, so yeah. Overflowing Chalice, kind of overkill I guess, but I do like Sulfur Flask. It's a lot of extra damage, and it certainly does help with the uptime. Yeah. So that's about it on the gear. On the gems, okay, on the gems, everything's exactly where it was. This did end up being like the best 6 link, I think, for damage. Let's see if there's anything interesting down here. Okay, so I did end up doing, at one point I was running like self-cast Steel Skin, but I swapped out to damage. I went from like cast and damage taken Immortal Call to Steel Skin self-cast back to cast and damage taken Immortal Call, and Blood Rage is not linked to it technically, but there it is. This link I did keep let's see, increased duration for Val Haste and Enduring Cry. I mean, Enduring Cry has quite the uptime there. And then the cooldown, you can see about 2/3 uptime there on Enduring Cry. And then we have Ancestral Protector, which is giving me a whole bunch of extra damage against bosses. I always put it down on bosses, or like essences or something, or even expeditions. But it is not linked to the increased duration, so a little bit of a weird link there. Up here we got Wrath and Grace, which are getting the benefits of +1 level of AoE gems now. I forgot to mention with the helmet, I was able to get the next breakpoint of AoE as well. I think 21 area of effect, 21 radius for Explosive Concoction. Sniper's Mark and Mark on Hit there. And here we have my new favorite 4-link, because now I did have Fortify built into Shield Charge, but the new tattoo system allows us to get Fortify very easily on the attribute, 30 plus 30 strength, so I went ahead and did that. And I did have to put momentum away, but I was able to squeeze in and double up the faster attacks support, for which I was using 2 on separate links. I was able to get Smite in Innervate and Shield Charge, and this is This is my baby right here. This 4-link. This was a major discovery. It's incredibly powerful 4-link. This league, especially, I think. Yeah, my biggest discovery, honestly, for this build was the power of Val Smite. I discovered that later on. I don't even remember if it was part of the build guide, actually. But it was definitely became part of the build, and would recommend it for anyone, honestly, anyone who can use it and squeeze it in at all. You know, if you're using lightning damage in your build, some kind of melee type build, totally overpowered. I mean, the amount of extra lightning damage is crazy, and I couldn't believe how much it actually killed stuff. Like, you couldn't see it in that expedition in the video because they were immune to lightning damage, but I would just pop Val Smite and the entire expedition would just blow up. Partially because of Impulsa, of course, which is kind of the last item I forgot to mention. Yeah, Impulsa was absolute MVP for clear. Yeah, super, super crazy strong. And of course, the proliferation Vinctor really helped with override the lack of proliferation from Impulsa. But either way, you know, it still worked out nicely. Yeah, God, I loved that. Val Smite combined with Impulsa. That was dirty. Dirty, man. Just shocked everything, and then it gives you an aura for even more shock chance. So good. So good. Absolutely loved it. And the Innervate's just icing on the cake there. So definitely my favorite 4-link that I've come up with this league. That one there. That'll do it for the gems. As far as the passives. Alright, so everything is exactly the same as it was, except... yeah, I had to take points out of deflection because I just kind of needed to put them elsewhere, you know, to basically I needed to put some extra points over here for the tattoo of the Ramako Makanga, I guess it's pronounced. So now I have 7 projectiles, not 6. And that was done for Seam, the build guide. I mentioned I got a lot of extra chaos res. I was able to drop a bunch of dexterity, even though I get a whole bunch of accuracy from it. That would have created a problem. I still now have... Is it? 3,442, and I got 3,307 life, so Precise Technique is working with a little bit of breathing room. But dropping all of the dex, yeah, that's why I had to pick up accuracy on the helmet. Retaliation was super strong. Of course, Revelry needed it for the 50%, triple 50% aura. Setup, Mark for Death, Mark Master here, very, very strong in any kind of single target. Still really like the increased movement speed, affects shield charge run rate or in town run rate, either way. Had to take, I think, just 2 of all attributes to get attributes lined up pretty nice. And then here's the Fortify. And then, yeah, the extra projectile. And then basically just a bunch of chaos with. Oh, I don't even know if this is actually any good. It's the one that would proc the most. And I do think it's absolutely imperative that any build would get blind. If they have an attack-based build, you should get blind in your build, whether you need it or not. Just for a little bit of an added survivability. There. So, yeah, everything is exactly where it was. I did add... Right, I added a jewel slot. It kind of needed to for Corrupted Blood Immunity. Wasn't getting it any other way. Reduced effective curse is nice, and lightning damage... feel good, and I was able to make use of the 15 intelligence actually for figuring out or unlocking some more tattoos effectively, even though I still had to take Thief's Craft to work that out. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there's any other interesting things to mention there. Everything's exactly like it was in the build guide, so that's a good sign. You know, I didn't really have to upset or change the build hardly at all in 7 days, and I got to see the progress of increasing the power ever so slightly in meaningful ways. It was really nice to see, and kept things simple. As I mentioned before, between the gear, the gems, and the skills, of those 3, it was really only the skills, or sorry, not the skills, I mean the gems. It was really just the gems that changed. The links changed a lot. I was kind of testing and looking at different possible things, and of course, you know, figuring out this 4-link and all that. It was a lot of fun. I was using Momentum with Shield Charge. I was using Fortify with Shield Charge a while back. I was using, like I mentioned, the cast and damage taken in Mortal Call versus Steel Skin. At one point, I didn't even have Ancestral Protector in here. You know, it was just all kinds of little variations that I was doing for all of that. Okay. PoB time. Have a setup. Cranked all the way up to 17 million DPS. because it's set up the same way it was in the build guide. The extra projectile does a lot there. We got blind in there now. We got, what was it, 74% chance to shock, not 100. We got area radius 21. Next breakpoint's pretty far. Let's see, anything else important there? No quantity or rarity. That's going to change pretty soon. And yeah, I think nothing else really to mention there. I will take a look at the spread to see how Trinity is working. You can see Trinity is extremely reliable here with the lightning all the way up to 256k, fire all in between there, and cold under, all of that. So Trinity very, very effective there. In the config, everything is topped off, basically the same as it was in the build guide. I was able to add, do you have soul gain prevention? Look how much extra damage that is just from, I mean, my goodness, it's 11 million extra DPS on here. Just for that suffix on the boots that I was able to add. Let's see, anything else? I think that might actually be it, as far as sort of things that were really added. The other major thing, of course, would be a 7th projectile. That's a big one, rather big. And yeah, here is everything. So this POB will be linked in the description of the video. Can't really think of anything else to look at. I'm not going to go over it in great detail about how much damage would this do against bosses. It's not for bossing, not what the build is for. It's for exactly what you saw it do in the map. Oh, I think, yeah, I'm not sure if I had full life. I'm not sure I was using that support gem on the build guide either. Maybe it was. Can't forget. Can't remember. All right, so there it is. Yeah. So in conclusion, definitely... Yeah, I don't know if it's my most experimental build because of this poison tornado shot, but this was definitely the most experimental, off-the-cuff, spur-of-the-moment, last-moment kind of setup thing. I was setting up to do Poisonous Concoction, and I do not regret changing my mind and doing Explosive Concoction because I just saw it as a very viable alternative. I went ahead and set up the mock gear for it before the league started to try it out, and yeah, I really enjoyed playing it. Very glad I did it. Mainly because I've already done Poisonous Concoction. So, you know, I already know that was a good build. And if you're doing that build, you know, no regrets. Still really strong and tankier than this one, especially with the ghost stance and everything. But we're going to be moving on now to bigger and better things. I was going to farm a Mage Blood with this build, which, you know, no investment strategies. But, yeah, I got an alert. I was informed by some very smart people that we might be in for quite the ride this league. This may, in fact, be a top contender league for one of the best magic finding leagues we've ever had, or had in modern times, anyway. Because of the ghost system and all that stuff working. So I need to get on that. That's the kind of content I would be very much known for. It's exactly, you know, down my alley, like the Calandra God Touch solo farming stuff was, that made me so popular in the first place. It would almost be a sin if I didn't, you know, explore that ASAP. So gonna be, you know, take a wild turn into the road less traveled by here, where I don't think many people are gonna be testing solo ghost busting, magic finding, just completely self-efficient build. So I'm gonna have to work pretty hard to get something that will work with that. You know, I'll probably just start by retrofitting this build into Magic Find. It may crash and burn, that's fine. I got some other things I want to try as a backup. All kinds of different builds that will potentially work, but I do want to stick with shield. I absolutely love, you know, I don't want to lose this 4-link. I don't want to lose shield charge. This league is especially potent because this is definitely, I don't hear people talk about this, but just getting Fortify into all melee skills, I mean, that really improved melee a lot this league specifically. So, you know, if you like playing melee, this is actually a decent league to play melee because of that tattoo specifically, I think. But anyway, let me know what you thought of this build, the evolution of it. If you saw it throughout the last 7 days, you got to see it evolve. You got to see. I even have people in the comments saying, "Wow, this build looks like it's doing a lot more damage today than it was just yesterday." Stuff like that, and it's true. I mean, it was incremental upgrades here and there made quite a big difference, and it looks like the PoB DPS is about. I think it was like 11 million in the PoB for the League Start setup, and now it's just 17 million with the same config essentially. So that means I'm doing about 70 or 80%, or 60 or 70% more damage than I was, and kind of forgot to check there, but I think it said 54k effective health as well. Definitely more than I had at the League Start. But yeah, do you like it when I try out these crazy wonky build ideas? I'm curious. I'm kind of splitting my content a little here with the build stuff and then with the farming stuff. I just came out with a couple farming vids, but I definitely want to get this because people were requesting it. So there it is. There's your video. But yeah, just kind of cutting off the build a little shorter than maybe I wanted to, because we got to get to the Magic Find stuff ASAP now. So that's what I'm working on next, and that's what you have to look forward to. I'll be coming out with a video as early as tomorrow. I think all the next videos that are coming out in the foreseeable future all gonna have something to do with Magic Find. So better get ready, boys. Getting on that Magic Find train. I'll see you in that next video later.